Okay, so in our previous video, we added our blue ticks for single and red or unread messages. But if we send a message to our other user saying hello, for example, here this user is going to receive the message here, but we're not being updated if they've actually read the message. So let's fix that in this video by creating another event so we can broadcast it. So go back to Visual Studio. In here, open the terminal. Here, just pick the one which does not have a server currently running. Go to bash, for example, if you have it. You can use PHP or any other. So in here, we're going to make an artisan command, PHP artisan make event. Let's call this MessageRead. All right, so we have this event. If you go to the top here in the events file explorer, we have another MessageRead. So in here, first at the class MessageRead here, add implements should broadcast. This is important, don't forget this, otherwise it's not going to work. And then in here, let's just remove that. Or at the top here, just type public. We're going to receive two parameters, conversation ID and receiver's ID, nothing more. So here, conversation ID, public, here, receiver ID. Let's do the same in the construct here, conversation ID, comma, receiver ID. Let's just assign them this. Conversation ID is equals to conversation ID, this. Receiver ID is equals to receiver ID. Right, now here we're gonna like broadcast with, so let's create another function again. Broadcast with, make sure it's broadcast with as it is, otherwise it's gonna give you an error. These are like conventions in Laravel. So in here, in the broadcast with, we're gonna add a return. Here, make this an array like that. Here, add some inverted commas. Here, type conversation ID will be equals to this conversation ID. Make that a comma, not a semicolon. In here, type receiver ID will be equals to this receiver ID. Right, and then here add a semicolon at the end of the return. In here, with the broadcast on, we're going to broadcast on the same chat channel that we broadcasted in our previous message sent. Here, type chat dot, outside the dot. Here, go and type another dot. Type this receiver ID. Remove the semicolon. Let's add a semicolon at the end, of course. Alright, so I actually had to come back and redo this part because I realized that we had an error on a typo. If you scroll up here, you see we wrote conversation instead of conversation. Make sure there's an N there, and an N there, and an N there, and an N there. Alright, so now if you double click on, make sure they all highlight, meaning everything is okay. So now we can now proceed to our chat box. In here, we're gonna listen for another event. So let's just click enter. Let's copy this whole line so we can save up some time, and then just paste this one. And then here we're only going to change two things. Here from message sent, make to message read the event, and also go to the top here. Here use app, events. Here message read. Okay. Now you are going to also change this to broadcasted message read. All right. So if you go back, let's now go to the bottom here. Let's now create a function for this. Function here, broadcasted message read. Parameter here is going to be event. Let's just test to see if we're actually receiving this event, like if we're actually bouncing back this function on our end user. So here dd event semicolon. Alright, but before we test it, let us actually broadcast the event in our function below. So here call this emit self, let's say broadcast message read. All right, now in here, after like outside this broadcasted message received, we're now going to create another function called broadcast message read. In here, no parameters. This is like a shortcut to our events and listeners. Here, let us type broadcast. Here, type new message read. Here inside the brackets, go type this. The conversation ID, as you can see, is even showing here. So selected conversation ID, comma, receiver ID is showing also here. You type this receiver instance ID. Here, after adding a semicolon, we're not going to listen for this event, because if I add an event self here, but we didn't actually listen for it. So at the top here, right after the updated height, add another listener called broadcast message read. So if we go back now and refresh, so we can expect a bounce back here. Alright, so this now tells us that our message is being received by this other user and a feedback is being provided to us. So next, let us now use this same information to mark our message here as blue ticks. Alright, so let's go back to our Visual Studio. Let's go to our chat box. Alright, so let's just close all these other, let's close this. Let's just leave the chat box because we're going to come back here. So in here, after DD here, well, what put in this event, let's just comment this out. Here we're going to make the same logic as we made before. If any conversation is selected, then execute the next event. Otherwise, don't execute anything. Next, if here, open bracket, int, okay, this selected conversation, if it is equals to, make 3 equal sign, int, here type event, conversation ID. Alright, here, if this is true, then we are going to dispatch a browser event in here. Let us say this dispatch browser event. Let us call this mark message as read. Okay, so here just make the selected conversation ID. Make sure it's an ID there and ID there. So let's copy this and then go back to our chat box. At the bottom here, just type another script. We're going to type window dot add event listener, open bracket. Let's call this mark message as read. Add a comma there. Type event equal sign, point that to open brackets. Here just add a semicolon. In here we're going to query, like we're going to get the query of the status that we added before. Document dot query selector, or add a comma there. Here we're going to get this one at the top. If you can see, we added the status tick here. Alright, so we're going to get this one. Where is it? In here, dot status tick. Right here, after getting this element, now we're now going to loop through all the elements that have a status tick. So here, value dot for each element. Here type, after element type comma, here type index, and then in here we're going to get the element, this one. We're going to get this one element. Here type class list dot remove bi check true. Alright, now element dot class list dot add this one bi check true all. Alright, also then next let us also add another class, text primary. Let's add a semicolon there. So now I think here we should also remove this from the other one. Where is it? Let us just leave this for here because we're only getting this which is unread. So we can make it read like this one. So here we don't got, let us remove the status tick from the second one which already has blue ticks. Alright. If we go back to our browser, or if we open the chat again and then send the message help. So now you see that after the message has been read here, we're now marking this one as read. Let me just show you once again. How are things? You see, it's now been blue ticked after sending the message. So our chat is now working real time with with instant updates of message being ticked like that. It's now working super. Okay, so before we proceed, I realized that this back button here is not actually resetting anything. We forgot to add a reset to our chat component. So let's go back to our Visual Studio, and then in our chat box here, go to the top. We have to add reset component. So let's go back to our chat list. In here we have this function that we declare. Just copy this function, go back to your chat box, and then at the top here after get listeners, paste this. And then in here, in the listeners, just after broadcast message, here type reset component. All right, now if we go back, if we, like for example, if we select a conversation here, and then select the conversation on the other one again. If we unselect it and send a message now, hello, it's not supposed to show as read here. So it's supposed to remain like that. So right now it's fine. But if we click on the conversation again, it's still showing unread. So to fix that, we have to go back to our Visual Studio. We have to add a few code. After loading the conversation, just scroll to the bottom. After loading the messages, here, right here, we're gonna save all the messages that belong to our other user. So just pull the message component. We're gonna save them, or we're gonna mark them as read here, where conversation ID is equals to this selected conversation ID itself. All right, so next click enter. Here type another where. In here type receiver ID will be equals to auth user ID. So I'll explain this in a moment. Here is an update. So this is actually a way for us to update a lot of records at once by using this kind of statement. Let's put an arrow here where read update read 1. Let's make it as 1. So now just put a semicolon there. Alright, so this what it basically means is that after loading the messages on our chat in our phone or our computer, we want to mark all the messages that the other user sent. In this instance, we are the receiver. So we want to make all the messages that our other friend or our other chat buddy has sent to us, want to mark them all as read. So this will tell the other user saying, okay, message is read. But how do we notify them? Because here we're just saving. So we gotta broadcast the event. This emit self here, broadcast message read. If you can see, this is also at the top here. Here, we're gonna broadcast message read. Like it's the same one that we used on when our receiver has received our message. We're saying the same kind of event that we are broadcasting. It will be the same as here when we read our message, so that when it comes back, it's going to mark these messages as blue tick. So let me just show you. If we refresh our chat, in here refresh too. So now I open this chat, I say hi. Right now it's unread, right? I can also send two more. Alright, so now you notice that if I go back, if I open this chat like that, I open, voila. Now you see that we've added one more feature that is gonna make our chat work better like that. If I send another message now, it's supposed to show as read. Why? Because our conversation is open. If I exit this chat and then I try to send a message again, and it's not gonna show anything yet. But when I open the chat again, boom, we have a read message. So this is it for this video. And now in the next video, we're gonna work on adding some unread messages count here. We're gonna work on this one, making this dynamic now.